Welcome ladies and gentlemen, Michael aka Spirit Shard here with a PC release overview for Final Fantasy XIII. Now, a few things to note before I start out this video and talk about the specs and settings and stuff like that, or lack of. This game came out in 2009 originally and was designed completely for consoles, so just that right off the bat will probably tell you how good this port is. It's not amazing, it's not absolutely terrible either though, so I guess for the general consumer, it's perfectly fine. It is playable, it works just like it did on console, but at the same fact, it didn't run very well on console to begin with. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and click straight on the settings. So before I talk about these, before the game launches, there is one thing that is a huge perk about this game, over the console version at least, and that is it has dual audio, meaning there is English audio, including all the CG cutscenes, and there is Japanese audio, including all the cutscenes and animations as well. So everything lip syncs and everything like that, and it's really nice. So for those that want that, this is pretty much your only option to have dual audio. But you have to change it before you get into game, which is kind of a hassle, but not that big of a deal. Okay, so let's talk about this stuff. Right here, you may notice there are no graphics options. And yeah, there are literally no graphics options, except for in the launcher, there is windowed mode and full screen mode. And it actually took me about 3 hours to figure out how to get windowed mode to function, and then it took me about an hour to get full screen to work. So there are quite a few bugs. I'm not going to talk too much about the bugs until later in this video, because most of them will probably get fixed later on, and I'll probably end up doing a follow-up video to this if they end up updating. It does seem like there is some communication going on between the moderators and the developers, so we may actually see a lot of these problems get fixed. But for this options menu, for the settings, you can see there's camera, and this does work for the mouse as well, which is actually really nice. So you can have inverted y-axis, x-axis, or dual. I prefer standard. You get subtitles. I'll make sure all these are on for you guys. Then you have difficulty. I don't believe this was in the English version, so this is kind of a cool thing they brought over from the Japanese version. There is an easy mode, so for them that don't want to really struggle with any battles, you can just click it on easy. There's also the battle speed, which you can turn to slow if you're having more trouble. Then there's also the default battle command. Anyone who has played this game before, you want to set this on abilities. Makes the game a lot more fun. Your targeting, help messages, so on and so forth. Down here, though, is your gamepad controls, which are unrebindable. So if you use a second, kind of company or a third-party kind of controller, you might have issues with these bindings. I personally use a 360 controller, and it works perfect, just like it did on the 360, which is where I originally played this game. But I have heard people talking about some of the key bindings being kind of weird, and so sometimes the start button will end up being A, or the right bumper will end up being B. So there are some weird things about that, and I don't know if there's a way to fix it yet. I haven't been able to find anything. On the keyboard settings though, you can rebind most of them. So if you look here, there are a bunch of settings, so you can end up changing those. One thing about the keyboard and mouse though is there is no mouse support in any of the menus besides the scroll wheel. So you use the scroll wheel to go up and down, and then you click to accept, and then right click to pretty much decline. You can't rebind all the keys though. If you look up at the top, you'll see the big banner graphic thing, and that pretty much just shows all the controls that you can't rebind. Luckily, they're pretty standard, so your WASD or ZQSD for your French layout is what they're calling it, and pretty much that's standard. And then you got your scroll wheel, left and right click for accept and stuff like that. The only thing that's kind of weird is backspace is the only other cancel, and so if you're using the mouse, you might have to, and you don't like right clicking, you'll have to actually reach for the backspace, or if you want to use a numpad, it's quite a reach for the backspace. But you can play this game completely with the keyboard, which is also nice, because I'm one of those people that would do that. Now, one of the things that is really bothering a lot of people, now for me, I personally like it, but at the top right, you'll see exit game and escape under it. If you hit escape, it will literally exit the game immediately. Now, for those that don't play a lot of Japanese, indie games on PC, or Japanese PC games in general, don't know that that's kind of like a standard for them in a way. Escape always just exits the game right away. Now, I like it because I hate having to go through 10 different menus to end up exiting the game, but with this, I just click it and I'm done. And it's super easy, super quick. But a lot of people are used to the other layout to where escape just exits menus, and you can't do that it will just close the game, and so people are losing some save data because they keep accidentally closing it while they're in the middle of a fight or something like that. I don't know. It's a pretty big problem. I personally haven't run into that issue because I kind of knew it when I came into here because I always look at the options. So yeah, do make sure to go to the options. Also, some of these rebindings are kind of weird, like the default bindings. I do suggest changing them. Like the open pause menu is 0 on your numbers. I don't know why it's all the way on the other side of the keyboard from everything else, so I ended up changing that to 2 on my normal save. For some reason, the options don't cross saves, so you have to rebind them every time you create a new save, but that's fine. It's not that big a deal. Oh, and one last thing, you can change the on-screen buttons to controller type or keyboard type. I believe the controller will just show basically Xbox buttons, but not colored, but just Xbox buttons. But we'll go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to start a new game, and we're going to go straight into the beginning CG so that you can kind of see that, and I'll talk about it a little bit. Let's go ahead and start on normal mode. Doesn't really matter. Now, a few things to note. This game does have a resolution issue. So the CG, although it looks beautiful, and I am having this video in 1080 because I am using GPU scaling, this game only renders at 720p at the moment. Now there's been a lot of an uproar, and we had made a pretty huge uproar when the Japanese audio wasn't announced for us, and so they ended up adding in the Japanese audio, which is nice. So they might end up doing that with the resolution as well. We already got confirmation from a moderator that they're gonna, carry over the news and all the problems and stuff like that. But for me, personally, on a 1080 monitor with GPU scaling, it works perfectly fine. However, the text is a little blurry. But the CG does still look beautiful on this scale. But one of the main problems is if you're on a larger screen than a 1080 by... Wait, I said that backwards. 1920 by 1080 monitor, you're going to have a little bit of issue with artifacting and improper scaling and stuff like that. I don't know how it'll look for the videos. I think the videos will be fine, but in-game you'll probably end up having some issues, especially if you are not using anti-aliasing. And yeah, so I think that's good enough. You kind of get how that goes. And you can pause these as well and skip them just like in the console version. Basically everything that was in the console version is in this version. The only setting that is missing is a rumble feature on the controller, so you don't get that feedback. But for this type of game, I think it's perfectly fine. It's not really an action game. Now one thing you'll notice is in the top right, I have a frame counter. Now I'm running with VSync on, so it's either 60, 30, or nothing pretty much. So when it says below 60, when it's below 58 about, it'll actually end up being running at 30. When it's below 28, it's running at 20, the standard deal for VSync, for capture anyways. So right now I'm running at 60, but it does like to jump up. The game is frame capped at 60 FPS, I believe. I don't think anyone's been able to get it up to 120. So there is that to consider. We're just going to skip this tutorial. So a few things to note. This is one of those games where if you just want to play it, it's perfectly fine. But if you want to have the game looking the best it possibly can, you're probably going to have to wait for a few mods. There's already mods coming out for the resolution at this time, although they are a little buggy, but they'll most likely get fixed, or Square will hear our cries and actually decide to fix it themselves as well. But for me, I've ended up doing a lot of optimization settings in the Nvidia control panel. I am using a GTX 660 right now, overclocked slightly, not too much. And so I do have the game running decentish. I can at least hold 30. But I do have a few optimization things. I will post those in the description of the video. And then I also have overriding for a few visual settings such as Anisotropic filtering and Anti-Aliasing. So I think I have 4 times Anti-Aliasing on here. Anything more than that on 720 upscaled is a little overkill. And the Ano is 16 times, of course. Oh, I am also forcing VSync as well. The game actually forces VSync by default, and so pretty much no matter what, it's going to have it unless you turn it off. Just want to get through this fight real quick so I can show a little bit more of the environment. The cutscenes do look pretty nice. They tend to run better than the normal game. in my time playing, the frame rate actually seems to improve as the areas progress. I've only gone through about 3 different areas as I played. I've been playing pretty much all day to try and figure things out. And so far it seems like it improves, but this beginning area has a lot of things in it. A lot of textures, a lot of background. The render distance is actually rather incredible, as it was on the console as well. I do not want to change my control scheme. And then here's a tutorial stuff. I probably should just turn that off. There's the data log. So here we are in here. This is the in-game world, so you can see it looks decent with GPU scaling on Nvidia. I don't know anything about AMD's scaling, so yeah, and also make sure that you are using GPU scaling if you have it available. Monitor scaling is very, very sporadic. My monitor, I'm using an IPS panel and it tends to do really well with scaling. However, other monitors may not. So here's the menus. So I do run at 60 in the menus pretty much. It's very, very quick and it feels extremely smooth in the menus. The gameplay actually feels rather smooth as well, just because of the type of game it is. It's basically you're going through menus to do stuff. You're not actually moving around and attacking, except for it's in this open field. As you'll see, I'm running pretty much at 30 around here, not really touching anything else. Another thing to note about the performance is a lot of people are having stuttering issues at the moment, and most people don't seem to realize that vertical sync kind of causes that, so do keep that in mind. This game, if you have vertical sync off, it will tear like a mother. Like, it is just extremely ridiculous how much this game tears. It does not have any type of smoothing or anything like that, so yeah, when I tried running this game, I was running at about 50 frames per second most of the time when I had it off, but the tearing was just ridiculous. So if you're one of those people that's lucky with a FreeSync / G-Sync monitor, actually I don't think FreeSync's open to public yet, so G-Sync monitor, then you'll probably be perfectly fine and love the hell out of it. But for anybody else, which is pretty much everyone, you're gonna have a hell of a time with that unless you have vertical sync on. And if you have vertical sync on, there's that chance of the stutter, and you're pretty much gonna be stuck at 30 FPS for most systems. Now for me, the performance issue seems to be that the game isn't actually utilizing all of my resources. My GPU is not even going to its full clock speed when I'm running the game, which is a little concerning, and my CPU is running at about 20%, which means it's probably running on single core. So that may be where most of the performance issues come from. Now that type of stuff is very easy to patch or very easy to mod and fix in the long run. So that's pretty much just a waiting game for that type of thing. Overall though, the main problem with all this port stuff is it's not technically a port, it's technically a PC build from 2009 that they just decided to release all of a sudden. But the main problem with it is there are no graphics options. So if you do not meet the system requirements that really need to be there to play this game properly, you will not be able to run the game at all. And that's really unfortunate for people with weaker systems. A lot of us had high hopes that maybe there would be a few options, maybe AO options and stuff like that, which you can force AO in this game. You just got to use something like Nvidia Inspector and such. I won't cover how to do that. Maybe if it's requested I will, but not at the moment. Honestly, don't need it. Shadows are kind of low res as well, so I do hope that ends up getting fixed. So here in some of the cutscenes I do end up stepping up to 60, but it does fall fairly easy up in the beginning of the game.
This place ain't exactly paradise.
Domesticated peacekeepers. Nothing to worry about.
So one thing to note about the audio, I just kind of let it play for a little bit. So there are no audio options either. So if the game's super quiet on your system, on mine it's actually fairly loud compared to most of my games. But if it's really quiet, there are no settings to increase it or decrease it. So in my case, I'd want to decrease it slightly, but I can't because there's no options for it. So you'll have to use, you know, Windows automatic kind of mixer and stuff like that, which isn't that big of a deal. I mean, there's a lot of games that have that issue, but it's still just another thing that kind of tacks on to the lower quality of the port. Now the main thing I want to say about this port though, before I carry on to a new save and show you another area that I have loaded up, the port is playable. It works just like the console version, so if you never got to play the console version, it's either this or nothing pretty much, unless you really want to go out and buy a console. But the main problem with the console versions is they had constant frame dips, had a lot of tearing issues and things like that. It really made certain parts of the games unpleasant. And so far, for one of the issues, such as this area right here, which is the beginning of the game, I know the 360 and the PS3 both had a few stuttering issues in this area. I haven't experienced that personally. So if you do have the system to run it and you're avoiding all these different types of little bugs and stuff like that that haven't been fixed yet, it's going to run a lot better than consoles and it will be a lot more enjoyable. So it does have multiple save slots as well, so you can save. Saving is instant, so I'll just save, boom, saved. You don't even have to wait. Loading is also rather quick.
Yeah, you must be real nice from up there.
So I'm going to go ahead and carry over to my other thing. I don't know how to exit actually. Oh, there we go. So you hit pause and then back and you'll end up being able to go back to the main menu. That's a little clunky, but that works. Alright, so I've loaded in the other save that I had. This is one of the places that I have currently holding. I think I deleted the other save because I didn't see it, so that's kind of depressing. But anyways, I have this area saved. This is one of the more smooth areas. I didn't experience any stuttering in here. It does seem now it's at 30, so I think one of the settings I changed before I started, because I just turned on Anti-Aliasing for the video quality and now it's back down to 30, so that little tiny bit of performance and knocking down. But as you saw, for when transitioning into the battle, it was at 60, so there's a lot of frame jumps. I don't know of a way to currently cap the frame rate though without using adaptive. And adaptive, of course, will have screen tearing when you fall below or go slightly above sometimes. So that's not exactly ideal. The game just doesn't perform very well, unfortunately. I wish it performed a lot better. Now graphically, the game looks pretty much the same, or better, I would actually say, than the console version. Pretty much closer to the PS3 version, a little bit slightly better just because of the settings I have turned on extra. So the Ano really helps a lot in seeing in the distance and such. On the Anti-Aliasing, it also helps a lot because there's a lot of pixelization in those. It's definitely better than the 360 version. The only problem I have with it is the cutscenes on the PS3 were said to be 1080. I'm not actually sure if they really were, but that's what people were telling me on the forums, so that's what I'm going to relay, I guess. I believe they were in 720 and people just didn't realize it because you can upscale those things and it looks ridiculously good. Like I watched the cutscenes on here and I'm like, is that really 720p? And then I started recording and realized, yeah, the recording says 720p. It's definitely 720p. But it doesn't look like it because, you know, the quality is high and videos scale really well. So that could be just a false myth sort of thing. Now another problem with this game, man, I'm just saying that a lot, there's a lot of problems with this, is the game doesn't scale any aspect ratio other than 16:9. So if you're running 16:10 or one of the super ultra wide that I don't remember the scaling for, you will have issues playing this game where you'll get black bars or something like that, and that's not too big of a deal, honestly, for this old of a game that wasn't originally going to be on PC anyways. I don't think it's that much of a problem. I do hope they do fix that, because that would be nice to have everyone be able to play this game. I am all for equal rights, of course, and it is kind of lame that we got some shoddy port 5 years later. Okay, so now that we're just kind of sitting here, sorry for the long pauses. Actually, I don't want to go over there because cutscene, sorry, I'm just going to run around this way then. Alright, so let's talk about the launching bugs at the moment. So, of course, every game that launches, whether it's AAA, indie, or super omega awesome Osaurus like system games, it's going to have bugs. Like, that's just inevitable. It's going to. There's no way around it. Now currently there are no game-breaking bugs that I've really found. I have seen one person reporting that they're crashing at actually right after this part, but when I got past this part, I didn't actually crash. So that wasn't really a big of a deal for me, but it may be there. It could be that maybe their settings capped out, maybe they had issues with their driver or something like that. But there is that to worry about, I guess. People haven't really gotten too far into the game, so game-breaking bugs as in like crashes on certain sections can't really be covered. But overall, the game runs perfectly fine. As I said before, it runs good enough to play. and there are no game-breaking bugs except for one system thing to where it seems like some people are having problems with the game saving, but that seems to be a problem with administration rights through Steam and not actually an issue with the game itself. Now, talking about Steam, the game is on Steam, and I think it's exclusively through Steam. I don't think there's any other way you can get it. It does have stream cards and achievements, which is nice. So that's a nice little touch that they added on. What else is on my list? Sorry, I'm running out of listings. I think that's pretty much all I got, really. Yeah, the game runs fine. There's a few bugs with the launcher. The launcher doesn't always start. That's a problem, I guess, but overall, I think everyone's gotten it started. There was one problem, and it's easily fixed on the forums. I know that that's going to get patched. Like, next time they patch this game, it's going to get patched ASAP, because it is a security risk type of thing, to where you have to disable a certain thing, but you only have to do it for this game, and blah, 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 but it's still one of those things. It's not necessarily a security risk, because you know what you're doing, but at the same time, it's something that you shouldn't have to do to be able to play the game, but it seems to be affecting a very small amount of people. Another issue with it was the full screen that I talked about at the beginning of this video. I wasn't able to actually full screen this game right off the bat. I had to actually go through a bunch of different steps, and it was really strange how it kind of worked too. So to be able to get it to work in full screen, I had to start up Steam, turn off the overlay for the game, turn off Steam, like literally exit it, cancel all the processes and everything, start up the game, and try to run it from the, program files. And then when it started up, it's launched Steam, and then forever on, I've been able to launch it in full screen. I don't know, but that's how it worked. So there are a few things that, there's also rumors about the stuttering issue being fixed by unplugging the controller and then restarting the game and plugging it back in. Once again, no idea why it works, but apparently some people are reporting that it works. So there are a few little things like that, and that's kind of like just the general thing with shoddy kind of ports and stuff. I really do hope they improve it because, I'm not a big fan of bad ports. I love to enjoy games. But honestly, at this point, this is probably the best version of this game at the moment, because if you have the system requirements and you can figure out kind of workarounds to everything, and you have stuff like the Nvidia control panel or AMD's equivalent, which I already forgot to name too, you'll be able to make the game look better. So there's that. Oh yeah, and mods or Square Enix will end up fixing the resolution caps and frame rate caps and all that. So there's that to look forward to. Thanks for watching. This has been Michael aka Spirit Shard with Final Fantasy XIII, the PC release overview. Like this video if you liked it, dislike if you didn't, comment, subscribe, and do all that stuff. If you have any questions, go ahead and use the comment section below the video or on the Steam forums and stuff like that to go ahead and ask those questions. I will try my best to answer, and I'm always browsing the Steam forums to try and help people out, because honestly, I love this game and I really want it to work the best it can, and the more situations I find it end up fixing stuff, the better I get performance. So yeah,